Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 22 of the UTR Pro Tennis Tour podcast. My name is James Mackay. I'm the Director of Player and Collegiate Development at UTR Sports. As you know, the UTR Pro Tennis Tour is for rising tennis professionals across the world. Guaranteed matches, guaranteed prize money. Next on the show, I have Jordan Szabo, head women's tennis coach at Auburn. Jordan, welcome on.
Thanks for having me, James.
Jordan, the first thing I'm going to tell you, and I'm sure you're aware of this,
All right.
is Auburn women's tennis are currently the number one team in the country by UTR Power 6. Did you know that?
I did know that. I have been informed about that. In my opinion, not just because I'm on this podcast, but UTR is definitely like the gold standard metric in tennis. I think that's pretty well known for everybody. So definitely pump up our tires a little bit with that and feel good about it. But unfortunately, the matches are not played on UTR. They're going to be played on the court. So we'll see if we can go and get the job done. It'll be definitely interesting how the ITA ranks the season comparatively to UTR. But definitely the gold standard. So it's a nice thing for our team. And, it just shows we have a lot of quality players on our team.
Yeah, absolutely you do. You currently have 3 players above an 11, one of which I believe is about an 11.5, which is correlating to about 300 in the world by UTR. Jordan, you are a recruiter. You've done a phenomenal job at A&M and now obviously doing a very good job at Auburn. It's a very general question, but what's your mindset to recruiting? How do you do it? How are you trying to approach these girls? How are you doing this whole thing in a crazy world that we're living in right now with recruiting?
Yeah, I think obviously the number one thing is trying to get into as many people's mailbag as possible. I think the more kids you can talk to, it's a numbers game, right? The more kids you can message and talk to and, get ins with, the more chances you've got to get connections and talk to players, So I think that's the number one thing is putting in like the legwork initially, trying to get into players. We use UTR as a big thing is, players that seem like they'd be in the range that we're looking for. Obviously a little bit lower when they're younger, higher when it's, the older kids who are kind of finishing high school and, getting into as many conversations as possible. And then once the conversation happens, the biggest thing that I try to do is, selfishly as the tennis coach is try to keep it all about the tennis. I try to talk about why we think that our players are getting better, what we're able to offer our players in terms of professional development and try to keep it as tennis centric as possible. I think that's like been my niche and our niche here at Auburn is, being a tennis program. Obviously Auburn's an amazing SEC school and, great education and your life's going to be way better for being at Auburn after your tennis days are over. But, we're looking for people that tennis is the best part of their day. Tennis is their priority because I feel like those kids will improve more because, they're really passionate about the game. I'm really passionate about, helping girls get better. I want to see girls playing at Wimbledon and the US Open. And that's really like my biggest thing is I want to see girls fulfill their dreams. And I think if you keep it about the tennis as much as possible and, no lies in terms of like, we work hard at Auburn. We do private lessons every morning. They do team practice every afternoon. You're hitting twice a day. We're trying to get you better. But, you're going to give yourself the best chance to be successful. We have no magic dust. The magic dust that we think we have is that we'll really invest in you. And we'd be honest with that. And then I think the right kids come. It's not for everyone. We don't get every recruit. Trust me, we lose a lot more than we get. But I think we get kids who are obviously at a certain talent level. We don't drop our standards with that. We always have I'd rather not take someone than just take someone to take someone. And then, we get the right kids, I think, because then I think they get better once they get here. We don't just get superstars straight away. They become better, I think, with how we do it. But I think they get better because they know what they're getting themselves into and they're passionate about getting better. And tennis is the best part of their day. So I think we just try to be really honest in the recruiting. I do think being, especially an international coach, I think with international players that really correlates. And then I think like being an Australian guy kind of helps with the American kids because, it's a little bit of a different taste. So, I think we've been really fortunate to get the right kids who are hungry to be good tennis players. So I don't think it's any rocket science, but I think a lot of hard work and trying to have some sort of emotional intelligence but also just laying it out there is like, we're going to do everything we can to help you be the best tennis player you can be. And we want to see you get to the next level. And, it's worked out thus far.
On the men's side, I coached on the men's side for 12 years. And if a player was coming up and they were this age and they were ranked this, or they had a UTR of this, I would say to myself, yeah, that guy should probably just go pro. I think he's ready to actually go pro. Mm-hmm. What's it? And again, this is great to have this conversation, partners of UTR, mm-hmm. which is great, but it's also, I'm learning here as well, right? Mm-hmm. On the women's side, what do you think that level is where it's like, I don't know, maybe you should go pro and college maybe isn't the right option?
Yeah, I think obviously this depends how much pro tennis you've been playing compared to juniors. Like the top 5 or 10 junior girls are like all like very, very legit. They're playing at a close to a Grand Slam qualifying level on the women's tour. And in my opinion, I think we can cater to players until they get to kind of a Grand Slam qualifying level. They start making serious money at that level. They probably can fund the coach. That's kind of what I think is, if you're not at that level, why not come here? Because we can take you to in the US, there's so many 100Ks, there's so many big events, there's so many different tournaments you can play. Obviously, the level of women's college tennis is like sky high right now. But I think we can kind of cater to that. I don't think there's necessarily like an exact cutoff. I think it's more, if you're top 2 in the world junior, you're obviously been playing a ton of junior events, but then at the same time, you're 400 WTA. Probably if you play a full schedule, you'll probably be like a top 200, 250 level. So I don't think there's necessarily a cutoff, but I think if you're playing at that kind of Grand Slam qualities level and able to get into those events, I think that's when you should be playing pro tennis. And that's what I tell our players or recruits is, if you can get to that level, I'm going to be the first person to tell you should go and play pro tennis because that's your dream. You didn't grow up, in the middle of Slovenia wanting to play at Auburn. You grew up, wanting to play at the French Open or whatever you wanted to do. So that's kind of my opinion on it. I think once it gets to there, you should be playing full time because you can play qualies of Indian Wells. You can play qualies of, other ends. You're playing 125. So you can make a good living and, give yourself the opportunity to progress.
How do you, first of all, I think it's accurate in that you have 2 players going to NCAAs next year, one of which Ava Esposito, who played a lot of PTT events this summer. It was great to know her, a very amazing person. But you also have players that aren't playing, and they have, what you've done is you've able to basically combine college and professional tennis, right? Which is for people that don't know, coaches that are able to do that really, in my opinion, get it, because they bring in these players that are really good, but they also allow them to graduate or leave the program where their WTA or ATP ranking is a place where they're ready to go play professional tennis. Jordan, you are doing that, right? How do you do it? How do you combine college and pro tennis and allow your players to do that?
Yeah, obviously we're fortunate at Auburn to have the resources to be able to make that happen. That's the number one thing. And when I got hired, that was a big thing that I brought up with them is, I want to be able to do that. And I think it's necessary for a school like Auburn to be able to compete with some of these blue bloods of Duke and UNC and Stanford, who maybe don't have the kids who necessarily is interested in that or maybe don't want to do that. I thought that was like a key thing, and they were all on board for it. So that was the first piece. The second piece is kind of how I've laid it out in recruiting and with my players is, you tell me what your goals are at the start of the fall. The fall is all about you. It's about getting better. Obviously, that's the number one thing. But from a tournament aspect, I kind of put it into 3 pies. It's one, I don't really care about the college ranking in the fall or making the NCAAs. I just want to play pro tennis. The next one is like, I want to be an All-American. I want to be the highest ranked player I can be. I want to make the NCAAs. And then there's some people who are like, I want a little bit of both. So you kind of tell me what your goals are, and then we'll design a schedule for you. And then some of these girls who are like, hey, I really want to do the NCAA stuff. If you qualify in the first week, then we'll do pro stuff until you go back to the NCAAs. But I kind of let them tell us what your goals are, and then we'll design a schedule for you. The only thing that is kind of a stipulation is the match count. Like you still, I want to play all pro tennis, but you're losing first round every match. Okay, let's go play a UTR event, like where you're going to get a bunch of matches. Let's go and play a college event where you're guaranteed to get 3 matches. So I think that's like the big thing that hangs over it. But, this fall, for instance, the girls who have been doing the pro stuff have been fortunately, winning events or finaling events, and they've been getting plenty of matches. So it's worked out. But kind of you tell me what your goals are and we'll design a schedule. Ava's a perfect example. It's funny, she screenshotted me a text when she was in Waco at one of the PTT events. Stillwater, sorry. And she's like, I hopefully I'll be back here in November. She, for some reason, thought the NCAAs are in Stillwater, I was like, well, sorry to break it to you, honey, but we're going to Orlando, and she's like, well, that's where I want to be. I want to be there. And, that's what she was thinking about when she was at PTT events this summer. And I guarantee you, if she didn't play all those matches this summer and be successful and gain confidence and get the match count this summer, she wouldn't have been able to do this. And, that was her big goal. And she was able to qualify this last weekend. And, but everyone's on a different journey, and everyone's got different goals and priorities whilst they're in school. And I think that's what we need to do is cater to their goals. But at the same time, it's just about getting better. There's different ways to get better, different avenues, not one way to cook the sausage,
One of the hardest parts about coaching college tennis is you are trying to assemble a team, but you also have to understand that every single player is different. What Jordan has been explaining here, and I think it really is fantastic, is he's getting the goals of each player and putting a schedule in place to allow them to achieve those goals whilst still being a team. That is very difficult to do. It's very difficult to manage. But essentially what's going on is you are motivating your players to achieve their goals. And I think that's great. I think it's really good to hear about Ava. I think it's good to hear about players that are trying to go pro. Maybe they're not getting the matches. They need to come back and they need to play PTTs and they need to do whatever. But this is something that a lot of coaches, I think, can learn from to not only recruit the best players, but also run a program to hopefully win championships. Speaking of that, this is your second year at Auburn, I believe. In the first season, you tied the program record with 25 wins. You had the highest NCAA seed in program history, which was 9. Tied the highest ranking ever at 4. My question is, how do you run this program? You touched on it a little bit with individuals in the morning, team practice in the afternoon. How do you actually run the program specifically? You don't have to reveal all your secrets, but everyone does things differently. What do you actually do? How do you do this?
Yeah, well, we just try to worry about getting the players better. That's like the thing. It's like I have a thing right here on my computer screen, the second one over here, and it says keep the main thing, privates, the practices, the improvement of the players, the preparation, the scheduling, and recruiting. And then underneath winning with like a line underneath the winning, just not worrying about anything that doesn't really directly correlate to the players getting better. And I think the preparation and the player development and like the scheduling of matches and who they play and what tournaments we play, and just kind of not worry about anything apart from that. Obviously, like I've said a number of times, we're fortunate at Auburn to be resourced that I don't have to worry about things like that as much. I'm doing some of that stuff, but my priority every day is like helping the players get better. And we really individualize things every day. And I think the kids come from programs generally or private coaching that they need individuals every single day and they're used to getting that. So I don't want them to come here and be a step back with that stuff. But we just try to keep the main thing, which is getting better. And if you can just get like a tiny bit better at something every day or learn a lesson, in 1 or 2 months time, you can look back, but specifically for me, I think my job is to be really consistent. And, like for instance, Ava, she qualified for the NCAAs on Saturday. She played, I think, 9 sets in 3 days in singles, 5 sets in doubles in those 2 days. And, she took Sunday off when we got back late Saturday and we got back at 8 a.m. She was out doing a private on Monday morning. And it's not because she had the best week of her college tennis career. Oh, let's take a few days off. Let's rest. We're back to doing what we would have done whether she'd gone 0-3 on that weekend as well. And I think being really consistent with that, that's how you'll see gains and give yourself the best chance to improve. And I think the program takes a direct reflection of the head coach. So I try to bring great consistency with my energy and my intensity, and but at the same time, I don't coach it like a women's team or a men's team. I try to just coach tennis, and then when we're getting a drink at the change of ends, let's joke around, let's have some banter. The English and the Australians, we like that, and that makes it fun, and I think that brings the team together. But then when that drink break's over, we're back to work, and we're bringing in intensity that it's unknown to man, womankind. That's something I always say, and just try to be consistent with it. At the end of the day, you got to have good players. That's like, I'm only as good as my players are, but we think we're helping our players get a little bit better every single day, and I think it's just focusing on what really matters and not being too high and low and just getting after it.
What is the current, do you think, Australian mindset to college tennis in the US?
Funny, so I was just down there a couple of weeks ago recruiting a player, Stephanie Webb, who's coming to join us in January, and I went to a tournament in Brisbane.
She has been added, I believe, to your UTR roster.
All right. I'd like to see that. Maybe it'll bump us up a smidge. She's a good player. I got a high UTR, but I was just down there. I think it's still a little foreign to them. I have a good connection with Tennis Australia. I was a part of the Tennis Australia system growing up, and I know they're definitely getting more and more positive about, obviously, Chris Mahoney, former Tennessee person. He was one of my coaches growing up, and he's a big proponent for it. And, I think they're more pushing it, for the right kids. But I still think there's like this unknown. They don't really realize, for a team like ours, we got lots of girls playing pro events, and, I grew up in that environment a little bit of like, you're kind of a big fish in a small pond kind of thing. And not obviously Australia's a huge country and a well-resourced tennis federation, but you kind of get stuck like you're this big time player. And then I was one of the best players in Australia, and I was coming fighting to play 6 at Texas A&M when I made the quarterfinals of the Australian Open Juniors, and then I was in and out of the lineup my first year at A&M, and we were a good team, but we weren't one in the nation or anything. But so I do think there's still a little bit of people being naive on how strong it is. And, like our number 6 player on UTR is probably like a 10-6 or a 7-7 UTR. And we're like an exceptional team this year. But, if you're the number 1 junior in the 2009 class, you're probably a 10 UTR. You're probably not sniffing the lineup right now. So I do think they don't realize how strong the level is. And even if, your UTR is 10.2 or 10.5 or whatever it is, a 10.2 in college is a really, really, really good tennis player that was capable of winning pro events. So, I think Tennis Australia is pushing it. They've got Chris is really on board with it, and they've got a lady named Renee Woods who's helping all the kids make sure they're academically eligible. And I think they're pushing it still just a little bit of this bubble of like pro tennis and Nick Kyrgios and stuff like that, in my opinion. And I think if they could get some more exposure into, this is how legit it is. And, Adam Walton, obviously, you coached him, and, he was playing, 4 or 5 his first year, and now he's in the top 100. And I remember when I was playing, Vukic was getting going when I was getting done. And, he wasn't killing it straight away. And these guys are top 100 players now, and they came into great programs and had to work their way up. And, it's just, the level is just crazy how good it is. And I think people don't realize the depth, and these random players that have only ever played USTA and UTR events, and they'll come out and kick your butt if you're not ready to go. So
I think it's so interesting how every country federation is different. Like, I'm from the UK, the British mindset is go to college. Australian, I felt it was very 50-50 at times. Yeah. Italian is pro.
Yeah.
Pro. Maybe things have changed, but it's just very interesting, and I think the word is definitely getting out there about the real strength of college tennis. And not only that, but it teaches you how to be held accountable. I think it's something that's the most important, is you're held accountable around other people. That's not just about you. Tell me, so I am on the side of the college tennis coaches, right? I did it for a small amount of time, but I remember at times how I felt, right? I have a question for you. So is there anything you would change with the college tennis system, right? It's a spring sport, but you also travel a lot in the fall. Other sports, it's spring only, and that's it. And you do zero travel in the fall. If you could change some things or maybe some advice, what would you say?
Yeah, I think the fall needs to be shorter. I think the NCAA's, in my opinion, is a team that's trying to be really good. The NCAA's in the spring is better. I think you'll get a more true draw. You'll get the best players in it. You won't have kids like mine who are deciding which way they want to go. I think the only time for me, I feel like as a coach, is around Christmas time that I've got some time to decompress. But even then, you're like, oh, I'm trying to get this kid into school, or I've got one spot, or you see someone else out doing something, you're like, oh, geez, do I need to go see this player? And, so I think the fall being a little bit more compact like it was, having about 7 or 8 weeks where you can compete and play events and do different things, and we can really train. And then, because, the NCAAs were going next week, and, fortunately one of our players, DJ, made the final last year of the NCAAs, and, we're playing the Sunday before the week of Thanksgiving, we're still competing. And I think our first tournament was like September 11th or something. So, that's nearly 3 months for the fall. And, as college coaches, and all summer you're recruiting and you're working with your players, and there's kids who are in and out. You're always doing something. So I think condensing that for coaches, I think would be good. I think a recruiting calendar, this week is the dead week, obviously, because kids start signing tomorrow for 2026 class. So we're not allowed to recruit Monday through Thursday off campus. Sweet, but we can recruit off campus any day of the rest of the year. So you feel like 360 days of the year, you could be recruiting if you wanted to, and someone is. It might not only be one program, but one program's out there doing it. And it, as a coach, is very competitive. You always think, am I doing enough? Am I, should I be out there? Should I be going to see this kid? And I think having some sort of recruiting calendar, especially in the summer, or maybe whether it's the spring or whatever. I've done crazy things, in the spring, like gone to Indian Wells for a day, or, gone to Europe for 2 days. Yeah, I was in Australia 2 weeks ago for like 4 days, So I think some sort of recruiting calendar, which, I think you should always be able to message kids and call kids. I don't think there's any way of controlling that. But, the month of July, there's no recruiting off campus, just like this week, and no one's going to abuse that, in my opinion. So I think that would also help coaches, because, yeah, if you're trying to be a good team, you have, we have 10 scholarships here at Auburn. I've got 10 girls that they want to play pro tennis. They say they do. And you feel responsible for that. And, it's not one player who, they're taking a week off or they're hurt for a little bit and you get a little downtime. Like, there's always someone that will need something. And I think as coaches, that would help keep the best coaches in college tennis, because I think it's getting harder and harder. So those are a couple of things that I would change. I think the spring is great. I wouldn't touch the spring. I think the spring's amazing. I do think, the ball situation of using different balls all the time, that could probably get better. That's way out of my hands. But I think the spring is awesome, and I hope nothing ever changes with that. But I think the fall being a little more condensed from when you can compete would actually allow more development too, because I do think that's one of the beauties of college tennis is out there we're working with players one-on-one. We're not sitting in Monastery using half a court for an hour a day, So those are a couple of things that spring to my mind. I'm sure there's many other things I'm missing, but I think those would make my life personally a lot easier.
Well, Dominic Muller said to me recently, his thing was, great idea, actually, absolutely love it, is he said he would, if he had the power, introduce a timeout in a dual match.
Right.
Things are going on, and you get one timeout per match to just bring everyone in and get it in a straight line. I thought that was a great idea.
Like the bathroom break that people get at the end of the set. You can get one big bathroom break where you can change the momentum. Yeah, in other sports you do that. I do think that's cool. I do think having the ability to be able to, I know number one, you shouldn't be able to, but at any line, be able to put another player in it, potentially sub someone in, definitely keep your bench players with the more scholarship players now more engaged as well. But that's a really good one. That'd be a lot of fun. It'd definitely be like really annoying as the opposition coach, So
right. Quick question here about scheduling. Obviously, you are a member of the Gauntlet, the Southeastern Conference. Every team is very good. I think it's something that's overlooked in the importance of not only having a great season, but also seeding. Seeding at the end of the year in the NCAA tournament is very important. I don't know if you know now, but basically it's gone to a super regional format. Playing that super regional at home, being a top 8 seed is huge. What is your mindset to scheduling outside of the league?
Yeah, well, when I got here, I had no schedule, so it's been kind of tricky, especially a lot of schools are, scheduling a year and a half, 2 years out. So last year was just trying to get who I could, and this year, honestly, for the spring, it's kind of like that too. What I would love to do is play the best possible teams that I can within somewhat close proximity. Keep it somewhat regional. We're fortunate here that out of conference we have within a 3 or 4 hour drive. We've got Clemson, we've got Florida State, we've got Georgia Tech. Even I've talked about trying to get Georgia or Alabama, close schools, to play a home and home. So I want to play the best schedule we can play. We haven't released our schedule this year, but we're going to Oklahoma State, which they're a top team for this year. We're playing Georgia Tech. But I do also think at the start of the year, trying to get like a doubleheader or two to get the girls a bunch of matches. And I'll do that forever. But I want to play the best schedule possible. I'm really happy with my 2027 schedules now. We've got San Diego, Texas Tech, Florida State, Georgia Tech, and want to play a really good schedule. At the end of the day, if we can't win those enough matches to be 500, we're not good enough to be in the NCAA tournament anyway. So, the other thing I'm doing is, with the 10 scholarships, you're going to have some really good players who aren't always getting to compete. So we're doing a ton of double headers too, because I want everyone to be playing lots of matches and getting after it. So playing the best schedule that we can. But it's also, tricky sometimes because I've asked a lot of schools to play and they're just not interested because of the conference schedules are so tough and they're worried about 500 and things like that. But I've kind of taken the opposite view. Is I think the more wins you can get, the better. And, you talk about the super regional. We were super unlucky last year. We ended up being the 9 seed and we had to go to Duke and play 8. We ended up 8 at the end of it, but we were 9 going into the NCAAs, and we had to go on the road and play Duke, and we lost an absolute thriller, 4-2, but it was like 7-6 in the third, the last 2 matches.
Yeah.
If we play that match at home, maybe we win it. They were an amazing team, and they were better than us on that day. But, if we'd had one better quality win through the year, it could have been in conference, right? But if we'd been able to beat a really good team throughout the year, we would have been 6 probably. You're not stressing about it. So, I want to play the best schedule I can and play as we can. And we don't do like this year. We haven't used one team date in the fall, so we're going to play 24 team dates, which is really high, but we have 10 players, so we have to sit girls and stuff like that. So we're going to be, once our schedule gets released, we're playing a ton of matches and doing everything we can to play the best schedule we can. But I do want to keep it as regional as possible to save funds, so then we can play pro events in the fall and things like that. So just trying to be strategic.
I hope people hear how difficult it is for a college tennis coach, again, to manage this. You've got team dates, you've got individual dates, you've got 10 players. You can't go over 25 dates. It's all from a compliance perspective. This is really fascinating stuff for people that are listening to get a true understanding of what it's like. Lastly, and I have to bring it up, is you hear a lot of comments these days about NIL, right? You hear a lot of it, and I said on a different one, Tony Vitello said it's like driving in the fog. You can't see 200 yards in front of you. Maybe that's why he left to go be a professional baseball coach. But what's your mindset to it? How do you handle it as a department, as a non-revenue sport? And yeah, what's your opinion?
Yeah, so obviously last year, the rules seem to have changed a little bit. The needles moved with this new Deloitte third-party deal. This time last year, I was trying to find a player for January, and every kid was bringing up money and talking about how much money can you get. This school saying this, and you don't know what's true or what's not true. But I felt a lot of pressure with the money stuff last year. This year hasn't felt like that. I feel like people are talking about it less, which I think that means that this thing is, I can, I just got they send us an email every month people, this is how many deals you all had submitted through NIL and Go for your team. Like, we have not one person doing NIL right now on our team. It's not because I'm against it or anything. It's just, it doesn't seem like it's doable because, the schools that were doing a lot of it, it was all through the collectives and stuff. And I don't think those deals are going to go through for a tennis player unless they have a huge social media following or they've got a lot going on for themselves. So I'm not opposed to it. We've got to do whatever we've got to do. And, this time last year, when we were talking, and we're like, well, one of us coaches might just need to be a fundraiser, if things don't change, because I was sick of just getting no's, because I can get it. Some kid wants to go to the East Coast or the West Coast. They want to be in the cold weather, or they think this coach is better. Everyone's got their own prerogative. But I couldn't take it when I got about 2 or 3, but they're giving me more money. Yeah, I'm going to make more money through them. And that as a competitor, I didn't like that. And, I was like, well, maybe if this thing doesn't, and this time last year, they kept talking about the house settlement and this is going to change and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, if it doesn't, one of us might just need to be in. I want to do the private lessons, and I think that's my niche. But, one of us on staff might have to be a fundraiser. And thankfully, I don't think we're having to go down that route. I think we're able to keep it at tennis for now. But I do think it's an ever-changing goalpost, because I don't know if any, and I don't know the specifics, but I don't think some tennis coach wants to be the first person to try to submit a collective deal or something that's, $30,000 or $40,000 or whatever, because they don't want to be the first person probably told no. But if someone does do it and it's told yes, then that's going to open a big can of worms, because then everyone's going to be having to try and figure it out. We're fortunate here. We have people who are helping the girls, and they'll meet with the girls and what are you interested in? I think you can get small deals or some free equipment at something. But I think those days are over, at least for now. But like anything, it seems like everything's changing, on the move. But I'm not opposed to it. I don't believe in it per se. I went to Texas A&M, and we didn't get fed back in the day like the kids do now. And I remember, I think it was my senior or junior year, they're like, we're going to give you 1 meal a day for free. And we thought it was like the best thing ever, So
yeah,
I lived in a bit of a different time when things started changing a little bit. But I'm not against it. Obviously, we got to do whatever we got to do to be the best team we can be. I think we would have the resources here to make it happen. We're obviously not doing revenue sharing or anything like that. They have bumped us to 10 scholarships, which is awesome, which gives us, some leeway to take some hits in recruiting or hold a spot, or, we've got a girl right now who's not eligible and things like that. So, but I'm not against it, but I hope we don't have to go back to that, because it was really frustrating. I was trying to do so much when I got here, trying to build a team. I had no players, trying to establish what we're going to be about, get to know the players. We had so many new kids, and, I didn't have time to go out and meet people to fundraise, So I'm not hearing it in the recruiting as much right now. I try to be in as many corners as I can, and I'm not hearing it, and kids aren't asking for it. You hear it a little bit, but I always explain the rules have changed. And, right now it doesn't seem like it's something that's as necessary, but I do think in these big sports, it's not much has changed, because they can get deals through because these kids are celebrities. So I guess we'll see. Next time we talk, will probably be different, and I'll probably be out trying to find some money or something. But right now, none of our kids are making any money apart from the great full scholarship that Auburn's getting. And, we're trying to do everything we can to give them, great opportunities with the pro tennis and things like that. But hopefully it stays like that for sure.
Yeah. Again, my advice to players is, unless the money is life-changing, which can help your family in a case of genuine survival, do not make the decision based on money.
Yeah, your tennis career, like, even if you're making, you hear these rumors of kids making 50 or 60 or more, that's going to go away pretty quickly, especially if using it for pro tennis. But, I can use some examples. I played for Coach Denton, and, Arthur Indicnish, he's out there making a ton of money. Valentin Basharov's out there making a ton of money. A bunch of my teammates, Austin Krychek, Jackson Withrow, these guys are doing really well, and they weren't getting any money. Your program and the life that you get through going to the right place for you, you'll make times 20 that of a $50,000 NIL deal or whatever. So yeah, I think anyone that's deciding over that, but I'm sure you've lost recruits because it was $2,000 more or $1,500 more in their pocket or whatever, and people decide for that. But I don't know, you got to try and give him good perspective when you can.
Yeah, I think us tennis right now, we just need to stick in our corner and just keep doing our thing. Speaking of revenue coaches, one good story actually. Bruce Pearl, I live in a neighborhood here in Knoxville, and Bruce Pearl used to live in a house 100 yards away.
Okay.
So that was kind of cool. He's no longer the basketball coach at Auburn. And then the last question is, who is going to be the football coach at Auburn?
I don't know who's going to be the football coach. They don't share it with me. I'm not quite high enough in the totem pole. I just do what I'm saying and nod my head, and I'll congratulate them on whoever they get. But the atmosphere, you know, obviously I spent a lot of time at A&M as a player and as a coach, and yeah, like the A&M atmosphere for football was incredible, but the Auburn atmosphere, it's like unbelievable. You know, they had a tough season. I'm going to the games. But people are wild. You know, it's intimidating. It's ruthless. The fans, and they love it, and it's just different. You know, like these old school teams, SEC schools. You know, they want success bad, and I think they deserve success. This fan base, like they're so loyal, and you know, I think it's obviously a tough time to be hiring a football coach. There's a lot of really good jobs open, but I do think, you know, Auburn is maybe maybe the best job because they've a lot of good alignment, and you know, they got an amazing facility over there and the loyal fan base. And I think John Cohen, he hired me. He's incredible, and he's a coach. You know, he was a baseball coach at Mississippi State, and he gets it. You know, I love working for a guy who gets it. You know, so. I think it's a great opportunity. They've got an amazing roster, and I think it could turn really quick. And I don't know, you just hear the stuff. I just see the stuff on Twitter like anybody else does. But I hope they bring in somebody that's wanting to try and win and bring in some great energy and some good passion.
The hire that Auburn needs to make is Alex Golesh at South Florida. Just going to throw it out there. And the other prediction I have is Auburn will beat Alabama in a couple weeks' time. Okay. Anyway.
So that can be my first Iron Bowl, so I hope so. I'm excited to go to that.
That's my prediction. So just to recap this, I think this has been one of the best episodes so far. Just honesty. Really appreciate, Jordan, your honesty in terms of how you run this program, the state of college tennis, you know, with everything going on with scholarships and roster spots and NIL and individual versus team. And I think everyone needs to just listen to this and truly get an understanding of what it takes to lead a team to try and actually win a title. So, Jordan, we wish you and your team all the best this year at UTR. I will certainly be following, and I will see you next week at NCAA. So thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thanks, James. Thanks for having us. Thanks for putting the spotlight on college tennis, and War Eagle.
Cheers.